Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. We are starting something super exciting called First Chapter Fridays, where the teachers are going to read some of our favorite books, the first chapter. You can listen along and then decide if this book might be something that you would like to read. I have chosen Lord of the Rings, more specifically, The Fellowship of the Ring. It is my all-time favorite book. It is so good. I have read it many times. I'm sure some of you have seen the movies. It's actually what connected me and my husband. We both had a really big interest in Lord of the Rings. So it just has a really important significance in my life. So I am not going to read the whole first chapter. Okay, this book, the chapters are like 50 pages long. And I ain't got that kind of time, and y'all are going to sit here and listen to me read 50 pages. I know y'all, it's not going to happen. So I'm just going to read the first couple of pages because it's going to get you into the story, and then you can take it from there. Okay, so chapter 1, we're just going to hop right into it. A long-expected party. When Mr. Bilbo Baggins of Bag End announced that he would shortly be celebrating his 11st birthday with a party of special magnificence, there was much talk and excitement in Hobbiton. Bilbo was very rich and very peculiar, and had been the wonder of the Shire for 60 years, ever since his remarkable disappearance and unexpected return. The riches he had brought back from his travels had now become a local legend, and it was popularly believed, whatever the old folk might say, that the hill at Bag End was full of tunnels stuffed with treasure. And if that was not enough for fame, there was his prolonged vigor to marvel at. Time wore on, but it seemed to have little effect on Mr. Baggins. At 90, he was much the same as at 50. At 99, they began to call him well-preserved, but unchanged would have been nearer to the mark. There were some that shook their heads and thought this was too much of a good thing. It seemed unfair that anyone should possess apparently perpetual youth, as well as, reputably, inexhaustible wealth. "It will have to be paid for," they said. "It isn't natural, and trouble will come of it." But so far, trouble had not come, and as Mr. Baggins was generous with his money, most people were willing to forgive him his oddities and his good fortune. He remained on visiting terms with his relatives, except, of course, for the Sackville Bagginses, and he had many devoted admirers among the hobbits of poor and unimportant families. But he had no close friends until some of his younger cousins began to grow up. The eldest of these, and Bilbo's favorite, was young Frodo Baggins. When Bilbo was 99, he adopted Frodo as his heir and brought him to live at Bag End, and the hopes of the Sackville Bagginses were finally dashed. Bilbo and Frodo happened to have the same birthday, September 22nd. "You had better come and live here, Frodo, my lad," said Bilbo one day, "and then we can celebrate our birthday parties comfortably together." At that time, Frodo was still in his tweens, as the hobbits called their irresponsible 20s, between childhood and the coming of age at 33. 12 more years passed. Each year the Bagginses had given very lively combined birthday parties at Bag End. But now it was understood that something quite exceptional was being planned for that autumn. Bilbo was going to be 111, 111, a rather curious number and a very respectable age for a hobbit. The old Took himself had only reached 130, and Frodo was going to be 33. 33, an important number, the date of his coming of age. Tongues began to wag in Hobbiton and Bywater. The rumor of the coming event traveled all over the Shire. The history and character of Mr. Bilbo Baggins became once again the chief topic of conversation. and the older folk suddenly found their reminiscences in welcome demand. No one had a more attentive audience than the old Ham Gamgee, commonly known as the Gaffer. They held forth at the Ivory Bush, a small inn on the Baywater Road, and he spoke with some authority, for he had tended the garden at Bag Inn for 40 years and had helped old Holman in the same job before that. Now that he was himself growing old and stiff in the joints, the job was mainly carried on by his youngest son, Sam Gamgee. Both father and son were on very friendly terms with Bilbo and Frodo. They lived on the hill itself, in number 3 Bagshot Row, just below Bag End. A very nice, well-spoken, gentle hobbit is Mr. Bilbo. I've always said, the Gaffer declared, with perfect truth, for Bilbo was very polite to him, calling him Master Hamfest, and consulting him constantly upon the growing of vegetables and a matter of roots, especially potatoes. The Gaffer was recognized as the leading authority by all the neighborhood, including himself. But what about this Frodo that lives with him, old Noakes of Bywater? Baggins is his name, but he's more than half a brandy buck, they say. It beats me why any Baggins of Hobbiton would go looking for a wife away here in Buckland, where folks are so queer. And no wonder they're queer. Put a dandy 2-foot, the Gaffer's next door neighbor. If they live on the wrong side of the Brandywine River and right again the old forest, that's a dark bad place if half the tales be true. You're right, Dad, said the Gaffer. Not that the brandy books of Buckland live in the old forest, but that they're a queer breed, seemingly. They fool about with boats on that big river, and that isn't natural. Small wonder that trouble came of it, I say. But be that as it may, much like Mr. Bilbo, and in more than looks. After all, his father was a Baggins, a very decent, respectable hobbit, was Mr. Drogo Baggins. There was never much to tell of him till he was drowned. Drowned? Said several voices. They had heard this in other darker rumors before, of course, but hobbits have a passion for family history, and they were ready to hear it again. All right, so that is not the first chapter. It's only like the first 3 pages, but I'm hitting 8 minutes, and that's probably a little long. So I'm going to stop there, but I highly, highly, highly recommend this book. You can find PDFs online for really cheap, and I highly, highly recommend it. Let me know what you think if you decide to read it, if you've seen the movies. I'd love to talk about that too. Those are really good movies, really good adaptations. Peter Jackson did a fantastic job. Anyways, that's all I got for you today. See you later. Bye.